and welcome to your new favorite bookish podcast, Fully Booked and Caffeinated. I'm Heather,
And I'm Kelsey.
and on today's episode, we will be discussing the worldwide best-selling series, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, as well as the movie adaptation. So before we get into the book, as usual, let's discuss our wonderful coffee drinks. I'm excited to hear about your Nespresso concoction, if that's what you had or have.
It's always an espresso concoction, okay? Except for the random once in a while where I venture outside of the house. That day was not today. So I had a caramel cookie pod for my
Shut up.
coffee.
That's a thing?
Del yeah, it's a thing. Does every episode just make you jealous about my
Yes,
Nespresso?
it
I'm
does.
so sorry. Just wait for us to get back into holiday flavors. They get
Oh my
wild
god.
sometimes.
Mm.
So that with my extra shot of espresso and a little vanilla caramel creamer. Iced, of course. It's hitting the spot.
That's what I'm really excited about when I finally use my Nespressos. I can make iced coffee.
Yes.
Because I
Just
try
right
to make
away.
it in like the K cup stuff and it just isn't good.
Yeah. And they sell pods that are iced coffee pods, but I don't use
Oh.
those ones because they're not as strong.
Mm.
So I just use the regular pods.
But still, you can still make it iced,
Yeah,
which is great.
yeah.
I
And
know.
you
I
can
see
make a
like all like,
latte with cold milk.
and there's all those fancy TikToks that people make with like the fancy iced coffees.
Yeah.
And
Have
I'm
to get
like,
like those fancy, cups from
yeah.
Amazon that are like beer cans, but they're
Yeah.
cups. Yes, with the
Like the
glass
pint glasses.
straws.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah. Well,
So, what are you drinking?
at least you make fancy coffee. I have to go buy my fancy coffee. I got a large iced caramel coffee with sweet cream cold foam stuff from Dunkin'.
I mean, delicious. I'm
Their cold
sorry
foam
that you
isn't.
had to go somewhere to get it,
I
but it
know.
sounds delicious.
Their cold foam isn't as good as Starbucks,
Yeah,
but it's like.
that's facts.
But I did turn you on to that cinnamon caramel cold brew at
Oh,
Starbucks.
it's so good.
Hmm.
That's my little weekend treat, and it was
Yeah,
delicious.
I know. I was obsessed with it. I got it when we were in Virginia, and I was like, "This is so good."
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. All
Anyway,
right.
so cheers.
Cheers. All right. So, Suzanne Collins, who wrote this fantastic book series, which we're only talking about the first one today, which was still amazing. So, she began her professional career writing for children's television in 1991.
1991?
Yeah, I know. She's old. Not old, sorry. Like, not like, you know what I mean? She's older. But I was excited to read this because she worked on several Nickelodeon shows.
Which ones? Which
Uh
ones?
huh. She did The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo and one of my all time favorites, Calissra Explains It All.
I love Clarissa
Uh
Explains It
huh.
All. Oh,
I read
Melissa
that and I
Joan
was like, no
Hart.
way. Uh
That's
huh.
awesome. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yep. So, and then she also did multiple stories for preschooler shows, which
Okay.
I've also watched, like Little Bear. Do you remember
Little
Little
Bear.
Bear?
Yes. With his little upturned nose. Oh, I
Uh huh.
remember Little Bear.
Uh huh. And Oswald.
Yes. Yes. Wow.
So
Okay.
we've loved Suzanne Collins our whole life without even realizing it.
This is so weird. I feel
Hmm.
like I'm in Inception.
I know. I was like, this is. I had literally hadn't known this because I don't research authors before I read their books,
Yeah, not at
but
all.
because we're doing it for the podcast to discuss the authors, you learn all this fun stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, cool.
I know. So she began to write some children's books after that, and then she eventually wrote the young adult novel, The Hunger Games. So this series has spent over 6 years to date on the New York Times bestseller list since publication in September of 2008, and it's been sold into 54 territories in 52 languages.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And in 2010, Suzanne was named to the Time 100 list as well as the Entertainment Weekly Entertainer of the Year list. So she's killing it. Then in 2016, she was presented the 2016 Author Guild Award for Distinguished Service to the Literary Community for exemplifying the unique power of young people's literature to change lives and create lifelong book lovers.
Damn.
I
Thank you
know.
for your service, Suzanne.
I know, and this was the first time that the guild presented the award to a YA author.
Really?
Yeah.
Considering what that award is for
Hmm.
lifelong readers? Wow.
So
That's cool. Okay.
that's the first time that it went to like a YA author. So I was like, she clearly has an amazing career path. Like she
Yeah.
did a lot of cool things.
And it's really cool that she had already been successful before this, but then like this just took off in a way that she probably could have never even, well, how could you even imagine it?
No, and like she mainly did, it's either children or young adult. She hasn't done anything adult fiction. It's been specifically children or young adult because she also wrote like a children book series
Okay. Okay.
throughout her time too. So she hasn't really done anything else besides this specific genre.
Okay. Okay.
You know, you have like R.L. Stein who does like children, young teen, and then adult too. So
Yeah.
she just kind of her niche is children and young adult.
But also, I forgot how dark young adult books can be.
Oh my god,
Like,
I know.
this
Me too.
concept is horrifying, and no wonder I like my books so dark as an adult,
Hmm.
because this is what I was reading as a young adult.
I know. It's crazy, but so good.
So good.
All right, so the book, the description on good old Goodreads is: could you survive on your own in the wild, with everyone out to make sure you don't live to see the morning? In the ruins of a place once known as North America lies the nation of Panem, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital is harsh and cruel and keeps the districts in line by forcing them all to send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen, who lives alone with her mother and younger sister, regards it as a death sentence when she steps forward to take her sister's place in the games. But Katniss has been close to death before, and survival for her is second nature. Without really meaning to, she becomes a contender. But if she is to win, she will have to start making choices that weigh survival against humanity and life against love.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, they really give it all away, don't they?
Well, we kind of like discussed this earlier. It's one plot point is the entire book.
Yeah, like the entire book is just based on the Hunger Games.
Yeah, and Katniss and her story,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's it's not super complicated as maybe some of the other books we've done for the
I guess
podcast.
that's also what makes it more YA also,
Yeah,
that it's more like
because it's not as
centrally
complex.
focused. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, to start, I'm just going to read a quick description that I saved to my Kindle highlights. So, it's about the history of Panem to kind of give some background. So, he tells the history of Panem, the country that rose up out of the ashes of a place that was once called North America. He lists the disasters, the droughts, the storms, the fires, the encroaching seas that swallowed up so much of the land, the brutal war for what little sustenance remained. The result was Panem, a shining capital ringed by 13 districts, which brought peace and prosperity to its citizens. Then came the dark days, the uprising of the districts against the capital. 12 were defeated, the 13th obliterated. The Treaty of Treason gave us the new laws to guarantee peace, and as our yearly reminder that the dark days must never be repeated, it gave us the Hunger Games.
Damn. It sounds like not that far-fetched, which is so
No,
fucked up.
but it's just wild. And this is kind of why I love dystopian novels, because it gives you such a crazy perspective
Yeah.
on
I'm like,
what
you
could
don't know.
happen.
Yeah, like you don't know what could
Yeah, I'm not
happen.
saying that this will ever happen, but still, it's just, can you imagine, like, if this country went to war against each other and the destruction that it would actually cause?
Yeah, and like not being able to travel anywhere else, like being kept in basically within gates. You can't, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And being
Well,
completely
yeah,
controlled like that.
because you can't even go to another district.
No.
Like, you're in you whatever district you live in, that's where you're going to spend the rest of your life, unless you have the ability to go to the capital if you're, affluent, which
Which
the
no
more
one in
you
the
go up
districts
the
is.
line of
Yeah.
the districts, the more or less off you are.
Yeah. But then it's also like the capital needs, which we find out like as they go through what each district does, like the capital needs each and every district because of the industries that
Mm-hmm.
they provide or the services that they provide to the capital. So it's like the capital is literally just ruling them to get what they need. And then they have their police there, the peacekeepers,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that everyone stays in line and to make sure that the dark days never happen again.
Which is still kind of like a representation of like our country, because you have the government that controls everything.
Sure do. They sure do. That's why I'm like,
And
this
they
is not that far fetched.
they need certain, merchants to keep, you need farmers and agriculture
hmm
in
hmm
order to survive, and so it's not far-fetched at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a system that makes sense. It's just like on a smaller, stricter scale, but it's all the
Yeah.
same idea.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Oh, that's terrifying. Okay, go on.
Yes. So the next is, the rules of the Hunger Games are simple. In punishment for the uprising, which, crazy, crazy.
Punishment.
Yeah. Each of the 12 districts must provide one girl and one boy called tributes to participate. The 24 tributes will be imprisoned in a vast outdoor arena that could hold anything from a burning desert to a frozen wasteland. Over a period of several weeks, the competitors must fight to the death. The last tribute standing wins. Which, again, we're talking about children between the ages of, what is it,
12 and
12
18.
and 18. So it's like,
So you have 18-year-olds hunting 12-year-olds. And not
and
even
how is that
that.
fair?
Yeah, yeah. And not even just that it stops there, but that it's broadcast as the Olympics, basically,
Yeah.
or as like a sporting event or an award show. Like it's
Well, that's
literally their
that's what it is. It's
entertainment.
it's pure entertainment for them.
Yeah, which is just wow. Wow,
I
wow,
know.
wow.
So there are definitely a good chunk of themes throughout this book,
hmm
and a lot of them are interwoven together. Because as you read the book, it's definitely, everything is from Katniss's point of view. So
hmm
it's like a one point of view novel, and her being in District 12, which is definitely the most less off district. There's a lot of poverty there.
hmm
It's
But we find out it's not the most dangerous
yeah,
necessarily, but it is the
hmm
worst for the citizens.
survival.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot to see. It's really interesting to see her journey from District 12 to the capital,
hmm
and her realizing the differences in her life compared to these young kids from other districts.
hmm
So one of the biggest themes is the inequality between the rich and the poor.
Yeah, definitely.
So the nation of Panem is split into 12 districts. The districts closer to the capital are more affluent than the ones farther away. And an example of this is that the tributes that are the first couple of districts, they're the tributes that are there, they're known as career tributes. And these are the ones that are trained prior to the Hunger Games and therefore are stronger, bigger, and better prepared for the games. They have this luxury to get this training, and it's more common for a career tribute to actually win the Hunger
hmm
Games.
And for them
So,
to volunteer themselves
yes,
because they want the fame that comes with winning.
exactly. So you have these young kids who have the ability to train to basically kill people.
Yeah. And they
And
train
so,
from when they're probably even earlier than 12 because they
Oh,
can
absolutely.
enter at
They
12.
definitely start.
Because it doesn't say like in the description, but obviously the whole thing is the tribute at the end, the one lone tribute who wins
Hmm.
has fame and fortune for the rest of their life, enough money to be comfortable for the rest of their life, which to someone in one of District 1 or 2, they just want the fame, but
Yeah.
the money to someone in District 10, 11, 12 would change their entire life. It would mean that they
Hmm.
wouldn't starve to death.
No, and then District 12 only had the one winning tribute, which was Haymitch. So
Yeah,
it's not, the odds are not in
and
Katniss's
not
favor,
in their
you know.
favor.
So you know what I mean. So it's when you, especially when you're going up against these kids who've been training and are prepared to enter the arena and tear everyone to pieces.
Yeah, yeah.
So District 12, where Katniss comes from, is a district with more poverty. There have been times where Katniss came close to starvation and she was ultimately forced to illegally hunt in the woods outside of the district in order to feed her and her mother and sister.
Hmm.
So you have these districts that are near the capital that they don't have this issue. They
Right.
can eat, they have electricity, they have all this stuff that they don't, it's like a normal life.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas you have District 12, these people are, some days people go days without eating,
Hmm.
or there's not the ability to have food or to afford food.
And what they are eating isn't meals. It's
No, like
a random
she's
piece
out
of
in the
bread.
woods killing squirrels.
Yeah, yeah. Cooking up squirrels. And another thing that the capital, another piece of control that they have over them is that if you want to get, what is it, a month's worth or a
Yes.
year's worth of grain, you can put your name additionally into like the pot
Yeah,
to for
I
the
think
names to
actually
be picked.
I'm actually coming up to that.
Oh,
I have
please
that
do.
written
I'm
down.
sorry. I'm sorry for
Yes.
jumping
No,
ahead.
no, no, not yet. No, but I was like, wait, no, and I think that's in this section of theme.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, so she, especially since her father died at a young age in the mines, Katniss became this the sole provider for her mom and her sister,
Hmm.
which is also, but because the mom like checked out
Yeah.
once the dad died, she kind of had, you know, a mental breakdown more or less.
Yeah.
So Katniss steps up, and so Katniss is already this strong young girl,
Hmm. And she's
and
only 16.
you just immediately root for her from the beginning.
Hmm.
I did, anyways, because because I like that she came from such a hard place, and like she almost like dies of starvation I know a couple of years ago, and she just finds it within herself the strength to be that provider and
Yeah.
to take care of her family, and she basically is the person that takes care of her family from there on out.
Yeah. And it's from then on, it's really her will to live is to take
Hmm.
care of them.
Yeah, and it just shows like her strong character, and then teaching herself how to hunt. Like I feel like she's smarter than she gives herself credit for.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But she's also never been around other people to compare herself to. Like
Mm-hmm.
all she has is what she's seen on TV of the past games or of the other districts. Like they don't know enough about the other districts to compare themselves to anyone
Yeah.
else. And so instead of looking at herself as smart or whatever, she just looks at it as I'm just trying to survive. Like day
Mm-hmm.
to day to day, I'm just looking to survive one more day.
Yeah, and she finds out when her and Peter are at the Capitol too that, or actually no, this is when they were in the games. She thinks that the people that, so his parents run a bakery,
Hmm.
and so her assumption is that, well, they're well off and they're eating well, but they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're eating the burnt bread or the leftovers that doesn't sell, the stale bread. So it's all about like appearances
Yeah. And it's about
too.
her assumptions. I feel like
Yes.
she has this mindset that the entire world is against her, which it
Mm-hmm.
is,
Mm-hmm.
but because of that assumption, there are other assumptions that she's made that aren't necessarily true, like
Mhm.
about Peta's family and,
Yeah.
some of the other families in District
She
12.
definitely has a lot of assumptions about PETA.
Yeah. Yeah.
She and then and I just feel like he just continuously like proved her wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely
My little
an,
sweet
an,
baby
an
angel.
evolution in
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
So when she arrives at the Capitol and she's surrounded by all the food imaginable, she's basically in awe of it all.
Yeah.
Like she can't believe the array of food that's placed in front of her. And she gets to try things she's never had the luxury of trying before, like hot chocolate.
Hmm.
And she gets to fill herself up with food, which is something she's never experienced before.
Yeah.
Like she's never been full.
Full. Yeah. And there was one part where she's eating something. It's like chicken with like the orange sauce or something, and she's like
Mm-hmm.
trying to think about how would I even make this meal?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be able to get a chicken, but I could probably get like a wild turkey, and I wouldn't be able to get the peaches, but I could
Mm-hmm.
probably get some oranges, and like she's like I would have to hunt for days and
Mm-hmm.
trade this and this just to make one meal that they have in the capital that they could have anytime that they want, as much of it
Yep.
as they want.
And she could even request any food she wants.
Yeah.
So if she's
Yeah.
hungry in her room, she just goes on and she just looks like, okay, I want this. So it's this whole, it's basically a brand new world,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. And she's stuck between being in awe of it and being disgusted by it,
Mm-hmm.
which is totally
Because
understandable.
you have a district that's basically living in poverty and multiple districts that are
Hmm.
living in poverty and starving, and you have the ability to be this well off and you're not going to share that wealth.
Yeah. And she
Even a
says
minuscule of it,
a tiny bit.
10% of it
Hmm.
is enough to save thousands of lives,
Yeah.
and they're just like,
And
nah.
she says that's how people die in the seam in District 12. People die from
Mm-hmm.
starvation. Like they don't
Yeah.
die from natural causes, like they die from starvation.
Mm-hmm.
You don't die from old age.
No, it was no. You die because you can't find food,
Yeah, exactly.
and you live in a world that's shit.
Unbalanced, completely
And the
unbalanced.
president is terrible and won't do what's right
Yeah.
for his own,
Mhm.
selfish reasons. So, as you had mentioned, the Tessera system. So another example of the inequality is the Tessera system and the way the tributes are selected for the games. So there's a lottery where the tributes are chosen, known as the reaping, and it's completely random and anyone can be picked. The poor are more likely to end up as tributes than the rich, since in exchange for extra rations of food and oil, known as the tessera, those children eligible for the games can enter their names into the reaping lottery additional times,
Hmm.
which is what you said. So Katniss every year would add her name in more times to get the food and oil for their family for the year.
Hmm. Hmm. And so would Gail, and Gail had
Mm-hmm.
a lot more siblings than she did. So
Yes.
Gail's name was in there like 10 times as
Mm-hmm.
much as
Yeah.
Katniss's was.
It was like 100 times.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So, in order for survival, most children of poor families have more entries in the reaping than children of wealthy families and are more likely to be picked as a result. The rich who do become tributes are the ones who have the advantage of training and usually volunteer instead of being chosen.
And they also are well fed and healthy and
Mm-hmm.
a lot more likely to survive in the games based on that alone, not just because
Mm-hmm.
they're trained killing machines.
Yeah. So there's definitely a divide in in Pan Am.
Yeah, and it's almost like a, what's the word? Like a scale, because
Yeah.
it's like the closer you are to the capital, like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
closest are the wealthier and the more, successful, well off. The capital helps them out more, and then slowly as they move out, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And that's why District 12 is the poorest of the poor, and in that way, it's the worst district.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's probably one of the biggest themes. And then the next theme that is the most disturbing theme is suffering as entertainment.
Yes.
So the fact that this world is You know what would be a fantastic idea? Let's put children together and into an arena to survive, but only one can be successful. And in order to be successful, they have to kill each other.
And we'll provide them every weapon they could ever imagine.
Uh-huh.
And if they decide that they don't want to kill each other, we'll just throw in some wild animals, some fires, some no water so that they're dehydrated. Like we'll help them along.
Yeah.
Or we'll get them all in one place and provide the weapons, force them together, force them to fight it out, just to make sure that it doesn't get too dull.
Yeah. So reading this as, and I forget what year this came out.
2008.
What? 2008. So I was still a teenager when this book came out. So you read it at a young age, you don't fully understand the concept of the book.
Yeah.
Reading it now in my 30s, I'm like, holy shit, this book is fucked.
Yeah.
Fucked.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, this is dark. Like,
yeah.
Teenagers read this?
And it's crazy because I think as like a teenager, you're not they say your brain is still an adolescent brain until you're age 23, and you haven't experienced as much real world stuff either as a teenager as you will when you're an adult. So it's you read it and you're like, this is just pure entertainment, and then you read it as an adult and you're like, oh my god, this is tragic.
Yes, and you don't think about like, holy shit, this could actually happen. Like not exactly like this, but this could actually happen. Like the government could do this if they wanted to.
Absolutely. So as an adult, you are able to take what's written and look at it, and I looked at this book in an entirely new light.
Yeah.
Rereading it.
Yeah, me too.
Than what I did when I was younger. So the games present the tributes suffering as mass entertainment. The more the tributes suffer, ideally in battle with one another, the more entertaining the games become. The main draw of the viewers is its voyeurism in watching the tributes, who are children, fighting and dying.
And not only in the capital where they're watching it as their yearly entertainment, but the other districts are forced to watch it. It's projected onto TVs in the square, in people's homes. They're forced to watch the games. So even the other districts where their children have I don't know what 1 in 12 is. I mean, 1 in 24 is how many percent chance it is. But anyway, they have like a 99% chance of dying. Okay. And they have to watch their children die.
Yeah. But then what's crazy is that the spectators want to see a morbid, gruesome spectacle, especially the people in the Capitol. Because they have no stake in this game.
No stake in this game.
It's pure entertainment for them. Whereas, like we said, the districts, especially the 10 through 11 and 12, the stakes are higher for them because they know that there's a 99.9% chance that their child is not coming back.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the survival skills. They don't have
the means
they don't have it. Yeah.
And the Capitol sees it as not even as a movie, but as like a video game, because they have the ability to control some of what happens in the arena. So that makes it even more like they disassociate and just see it as pure entertainment. Like you said, like this is literally just for us to enjoy. We're not thinking about the actual consequences and what's really happening. We're just thinking, oh my God, let's get the bloodiest, most gruesome death. Oh, those two used to be allies. Get them to turn on each other. This will be great.
Yeah, and if the games are over too quickly or too boring, they're not happy about it. They find it not enjoyable, and this isn't what they wanted.
And there's absolutely no rules except apparently no cannibalism. That's the only rule.
Because there was one year that they were like eating each other, and they're like, you know what? That's a step too far.
Yeah. Even the Capitol people are like, ooh, wait a minute. We draw the line somewhere.
Somewhere, and
that's where it is. Jeffrey Dahmer is where it is.
So anyways, the game makers will make things happen in the arena to push tributes together or cause havoc in order for death to occur. So one of the more sinister actions of the game makers was delaying Cato's death at the end of the novel. And in the end, Katniss takes mercy on him and shoots an arrow into him, effectively killing him.
Mm-hmm.
So, when those crazy mutations come at the very end of the novel, the game makers made sure that Cato was still alive for basically like 24 hours.
Yeah.
But he was on the brink of death.
Screaming.
Yeah.
For 24 hours.
But they thrive on seeing
And
this young kid suffer.
And they forced her to add another death to her kill count just to put him out of his misery. So like, not only did they have to live with the sounds of him dying, but now she has to live with the fact that she killed him, even though he was going to die anyway.
Yeah, and so like they want to deliver like prolonged suffering to the audience at home, which again, like I just can't. I don't know.
I know.
It's crazy.
You can't even say that seriously.
No, and you can't. And then, when Katniss was getting too close to the edge of the arena, and she was too far away from the other tributes, they caused a fire to get her to get back into the middle of the arena because. Obviously, her being farther away, that's number one, it's not entertaining.
Yeah. No one wants to watch her just walking around and being safe all the time.
Exactly. Like, and she's surviving when they don't want her to survive.
And then obviously she got injuries from the fire, which affected her performance in the game. So they help it all along. They say that this is the price that the districts have to pay for the uprising, but really it's something that they have a hand in from the very beginning to the very end.
Whatever they thought that they were doing in the beginning, it's much more than that now.
Yeah. And now they're so bloodthirsty, the people in the Capitol, that every year it has to be a better show. And every year, and like even just the way that they parade them around before the games and do the interviews and interview all of them and like, do you really think you can win? Like to the people who clearly aren't going to win. It's disgusting. It's like putting them up on this platter and then serving them to their death. And imagine being a parent of one of these kids.
No.
Or being a parent in general in this society. Like, and that's what
I wouldn't want to have kids.
Well, and that's exactly what Katniss says. She's like, her and Gale have that conversation in the woods. And he's like, oh, if we didn't live here, she's like, well, we do live here. So we could never have kids. We would never bring our kids into this situation.
She's a realist.
Yep. It's
absolutely
fucked.
Terrible.
Anyway.
Yeah. So another theme is love and sacrifice. So to me, my personal opinion, the biggest sacrifice and showcasing of love in this novel is Katniss volunteering as tribute for her younger sister Prim.
Yeah.
For the Hunger Games. So basically, this was Primrose's first year at the Reaping, so her odds should have been slim to none.
Yeah, because there's thousands of people, thousands of kids in District 12, and her name was in there one time.
And Effie Trinket was like, you know what, this paper looks good.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this name. And then I immediately start sobbing when I'm watching the movie. Because then the powerful line of Katniss coming forward and screaming, I volunteer as tribute. She didn't hesitate for like a second in the book.
Didn't hesitate.
Immediately, once the realization hit that her sister's name was called, she immediately volunteered as tribute.
Yeah.
To save her sister's life.
And not even thinking like, oh, I have a better chance than her, which she does start to think of later. She's like, wait, maybe I do have a chance. Like she starts convincing herself that she has a chance. But before any of that, it's just like, no, Prim's not going through that. And if someone's going to die, it's going to be me.
It's going to be me.
No hesitation.
It's the biggest proclamation of love and sacrifice.
Yeah. And it just shows how she really has taken on that role of being Prim's caretaker and making sure that Prim is going to live, not grow up and be successful, but just to live.
Yeah. And the theme of love shows up in different ways too throughout the novel. Like you have the relationship between her and Gale and the friendship that they share. And obviously you can tell that Gale is in love with Katniss and that that's
and even really... in the way that he promises that he'll
Yes.
take care of Prim. And
Take
like
care of her family.
she has no doubt at all that he's going to keep hunting,
Yeah.
keep providing for her family, keep them, fed, do the best that he can.
I will say though, I did like his nickname for her. I did like that he called her Catnip.
Yeah, of course he did.
That was
Um,
cute.
but yeah, it's like they have such that like playful friendship that, like you said, there's obviously feelings there, but
Yeah.
the thought doesn't even cross her mind until she's in the middle of the arena. Like, because
Yeah.
she would never allow herself to be in a relationship, to fall in love, to have a family. Like, that's not even on her list of priorities because the only
No, it's
priorities
not.
are surviving and keeping her family alive.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you have her relationship with Rue in the arena, and
Hmm.
it's a very small part of the novel and a very quick relationship, but you can feel the love that she, because Rue reminds her so much of Prim.
Yeah.
So she immediately wants to take Rue under her wing and care for her.
Hmm. And it also is the signal of a shift for Katniss in the games, where
Mm-hmm.
remember she had that conversation with Peeta where he's like, I don't want to lose myself. And she's like, I can't afford to think like that. Like, I just have to
Yeah.
survive. And he's like, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna die, at least I want to die as me. And she had no idea what he was talking about. But
Yeah.
then once Rue dies, she's like, okay, I do get it. Because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they can take my ally away from me and they can kill this 12-year-old innocent little girl, but I'm going to make sure that they can't show her dead body because they won't want to show the thing that I did for someone I'm supposed to be killing, you know?
Exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
like that small rebellion.
Yeah. Which we'll get to.
Yes.
And then obviously the biggest relationship in the book at the end is Katniss and Peeta.
Yes.
And then you come to find out that this kid has been in love with her since like elementary school.
Literally since elementary
And
school.
Katniss is like, the boy who gave me the bread doesn't know who I am. Like, she's fully convinced that Peeta doesn't remember her,
Yeah.
doesn't know what he did for her, has never noticed her before. Because again, like we said, her mind,
She
she
thinks he's
doesn't
on a different
think
planet.
that too. She doesn't care about other people
Yeah.
and their opinions and thoughts. She only cares about her immediate surroundings and her survival and her
Hmm.
family's survival.
Hmm.
And obviously Gail, because her and Gail do have a friendship, so she cares about Gail. But she doesn't think about anyone else in any other way.
Yeah.
So she's completely shocked, especially, before the games and when they're being interviewed, and which I just, his name, oh my god, I'm blanking. His name was Caesar,
Yeah,
right?
Caesar.
Listen, Stanley Tucci played him fantastically in the movie, by the way, which we'll get to.
Incredible.
But I love his character is so problematic, but I love him, and so
But not as much in the book because,
no,
well, I mean, he's still horrible and he's still like the
yeah,
host of these games, but Katniss talks about how like he does his best to
he,
help them out when he's interviewing
yeah,
them and he'll like try and make a joke or try and make light of something. Like he does try to help
mm-hmm,
them so that they're not just sitting there like blank faced, so that the
yeah.
crowd can connect to them in some way.
So Katniss is legitimately shocked when Peeta admits that the girl that he's in love with, he's basically fighting to live
Yeah. He
against her.
he can't win the girl of his dreams because he came there with her.
And so now they have this star-crossed lovers
But
theme
she
throughout the
she doesn't even
games.
think that he's
No,
serious. She thinks that
no.
he's doing it to undermine her and make her look weak. And she hurts his hands.
Like,
She
pummels him.
slams him into a vase. And then she feels bad because his hands are all damaged and he's got to go out and kill people tomorrow. But he can't use his hands. And like she doesn't even think, because that's why when you said like you're immediately rooting for her, I agree, but I don't think that makes her likable. She is so selfish because she's had to be, but she's so selfish that she doesn't even think that that could be a real thing, that someone could care about her like that. She thinks the only reason someone would say something like this is to like make me look weaker.
And then towards the end of the book, when they're able, when the whole twist comes in the game, that if there's two tributes from the same district, if you can make it to the end together, then you guys can both survive.
Yeah.
So she immediately rushes to find him, which his thing was so cool that he like basically was good at painting and he could make himself like look into moss and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
And he's like,
That was, I love
because he
that in the book. That
decorated
was,
the cakes.
yeah. I love that he was basically able to survive because he was able to do camouflage on himself.
Yeah. No, I thought that was
So
really cool too.
yeah, so obviously I'm a huge nerd for romance, and so I highlighted a couple cute things.
Oh, here you go. In the book about
It's only
children
two things.
killing
It's
each
only
other.
two
Let's
things.
hear it, Heather.
But they fall in love too, so it's cute. All right, so like the one was like, I lean over and put my good ear to his lips, which tickle as he whispers, "Remember, we're madly in love, so it's all right to kiss me anytime you feel like it." I'm like, oh my god, they're so cute.
Did you read a different book than me? Because they do not fall in love, Heather.
No, they don't. But it's like, but they do in a sense.
They
And
one-sided fall in love.
it's because I just don't think that Katniss has the ability to truly believe that someone could care for her.
Exactly.
So, but then I like when he was like, "I remember everything about you," says Peeta, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "You're the one who wasn't paying attention."
Oh my God. Sounds like our red, white, royal blue conversation. Well, then we also find out that Peeta's dad was in love with Katniss's mom.
I know, plot twist.
I know. Oh, so cute. That I thought was adorable. I
Yeah.
agree with you, okay? I think Peeta's an angel. I don't think they fell in love. And
No, they didn't. They didn't fall in love
Yeah.
in the arena, but their time in the arena spent together was the catalyst to make Katniss realize that she did care for Peeta.
right. And
And
that she cared about Gale. It made her realize that she was confused.
Yes. And so it's obviously, I know that she didn't fall in love in the arena with him, but it was nice to see her energy kind of shift a little bit. And then she was, even in the arena, especially with Rue and then with Peeta, she was able to be selfless in a way that she was willing to take care of other people.
Yes.
That wasn't her family.
I agree with that. And I think it was that protectiveness, which she saw it as protectiveness, but it really was love. And like, as soon as she realized, oh, I can protect Peeta, okay, then that's my job. As soon as she realized I could protect Rue, okay, that's my job. That's what I have to do. Like, because that's what she does at home. That's who she is. So I
think that almost helped her thrive in the games because she was able to relate to a piece of her that's who she truly is.
Yes. And relate it to not being in the games. Like, that's just what she would do in her life.
Mm-hmm. So another theme obviously is survival, and this is just prevalent from the get-go. From the beginning to the very end, survival is key in this book.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest theme, the main theme. You know, in the beginning, Katniss is hunting in the woods with Gale to feed their families and keep them alive. Peeta throwing her the burnt bread in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You know, finding ways to stay alive in the game is a huge piece of survival.
Yeah.
Her blowing up the food and the cornucopia to stop the tributes stop them from being able to survive, because she knows that they don't have the ability to hunt like she does. So they are hoarding all the food and supplies in the middle of the cornucopia, so she goes and blows it all up, which was really
epic.
really cool.
Yeah, it's like
eating the nightlock berries, like that was. And then I wrote the wrong thing. It wasn't a jabberjay. That was the bird.
The mockingjay?
Or the yes.
Oh, the tracker jackers.
Tracker jackers, thank you. That whole thing within the tree when she knocked them down to get out, you know, the other tributes. Like, Katniss in survival just goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
She's so smart.
And it's, the whole book is, like, survival is from page 1 to the last page, because in her everyday life, she's surviving, just trying to, stay alive for herself and her family. She's fighting to survive in this corrupt and fucked up society. And then
Mm-hmm.
the games are like a microcosm of that survival.
Yeah.
So the same survival instincts that she had, now she has to use, but people are actively hunting her. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a much more concentrated version, but it's all the same thing. The whole point
Yeah.
is, like Hamish says, stay alive. That's the
Yeah.
only
Which
piece
is the
of
whole point.
advice that he
The
can
whole point
offer.
of the book, yeah, is like to stay alive.
Hmm.
So it's, I really think that the modes of survival that the author puts in this book, some were fantastic. And then another big theme is, of course, rebellion that you mentioned before.
Hmm.
So, rebellion, or defying the socially accepted normalities, plays a very important role in the plot of the Hunger Games. Early on, we learn about the initial rebellion, which ultimately led to the creation of the Hunger Games as a punishment. Unknown to Katniss, she quietly defies the Capitol multiple times throughout the story,
Hmm.
beginning as early as the first few pages where she begins to hunt outside the fences of District 12.
Hmm.
So in
Hmm.
the beginning, she's already rebelling without even like realizing. I mean, she knows, but she's basically defying the Capitol because she's finding ways to survive
Yeah.
outside of her district.
And they go into basically like the black market in District 12, and they're able to sell the things that they
Mm-hmm.
hunt to the peacekeepers because there's that level of corruption already that
Yeah.
they're rebelling, but it's okay because the people who should be reprimanding them and ultimately killing them, like the punishment is death, they're in on it because they buy the things that they're selling. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
it kind of that act of rebellion, it kind of makes it okay. It kind of validates it. And then she continues to rebel little by little in the games, and then the ultimate crescendo at the end with the berries.
Yeah, and like her wearing the Mockingjay pin, she
Mm-hmm.
rebels against the cruel Capitol with the way she respects Rue after her death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then like I said, her plan to consume the Nightlock berries because once her and Peter were the lone survivors, all of a sudden they're like, just kidding, one of you still has to die.
Yeah.
So for them, the biggest this was almost the outcome they were hoping for. I think when they did this rule that if you're in the same district and
Oh
you
yeah.
survive, you're going to be the winners. But that's obviously unprecedented in the Hunger Games. There can only be one sole survivor. So they had hoped that it would be Peeta and Katniss in the end because one of them would have to kill each other. And if push came to shove and they had to, Peeta would be like, "You have to kill me,
Absolutely.
Katniss. You have to kill me."
Yeah.
Peeta would sacrifice himself 10 times over for
Mm-hmm.
her to live
And
because
then
obviously he loves her, and then just he knows that she's the better one to live.
yeah, she has more to live for in a way because he wasn't
Mm-hmm.
exactly happy at home, and she's fighting not just for herself but for her family. And also the Capitol wants to take down this idea that everyone has of Katniss after the games. Like she became this beacon of hope. Like no one thought that anyone from District 12 ever had a chance. And then all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
she's, show stopping with her outfits, and she's got such a high score in the training and all these things, and all of a sudden the Capitol is, they love her and they want her to win. So they
Mm-hmm.
think, okay, but then when she has to kill her, the boy she's in love with, they're not going to love her anymore, and they're not going to look
Yeah.
to her as their hope anymore. Because what does the president say? There's only one thing more dangerous than fear, and that's hope.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah. And obviously, I think one of her biggest rebellious moments too was when she was in the room with the game makers, not to show off her skills, and she shoots the arrow through the apple in the pig's mouth and says the famous line of "Thank you for your consideration" and walks out. Like
Iconic.
that's uncalled for. Like you don't leave the room. You're
Yeah.
supposed to be dismissed.
Uh-huh.
And she's just like, "Fuck all you all. If you're not gonna pay attention to me, I'm gonna make you notice
Hmm.
me." And then obviously she thinks that there's gonna be repercussions for that, but ultimately it gives her the highest
Yeah.
rating.
Yeah. I mean, it's iconic.
So,
She thinks, she's like, what mistake did I just make? Like, are they going to punish Prim? Are they going to punish my family for this?
mm-hmm.
And then it turns
Yeah.
out that it paid off for her and it showed
Yeah.
everyone, including the other tributes, that she was a contender.
The rebellion theme was definitely one of my
Yeah,
favorites, just because I love how fantastic she is as a character in this
yeah,
book.
yeah. And her, a lot of growth.
Mm-hmm.
A couple that I thought of, abandonment is a big one because Katniss feels abandoned by her father, even though, he died of no fault of his own or
Mm-hmm.
hers. But then her mother checked out after his death, and basically everyone who she feels like could have or should have helped her along the way. But those feelings of abandonment are what lead to her independence. So
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning of the games, when they're doing all of the interviews and the training and all this stuff, and Katniss and Peeta have to pretend that they're this united front because that's what Haymitch and Effie are telling them to do, she is furious. She's not used to relying on anyone. She even says how long it took for her to trust Gale, even though he wasn't in a group of people who were being tasked to kill her. Like he was literally helping
Yeah.
her and,
Yeah.
rebelling with her. And it took her that long to trust him. Like she's so focused on her own independence that she has all of these walls up around her. And another big one is repaying debts, which comes up a
Yeah, that's a big
lot.
one.
So in the districts, especially in District 12, where food and money and supplies are so scarce, no one does anything for free. So Katniss
Mm-mm.
is obsessed with repaying her debts. So that's why she immediately hates Peeta, immediately doesn't trust him because he gave her the bread that saved her life. So even though she thinks that he doesn't remember her, she still feels like she owes him because she would have died without that
Yeah.
bread. And we also see how this bleeds into the other districts. So Thresh, which like this is another iconic part of the book,
Yeah.
he's also had to fight for survival every day of his life in his own district. And she's about to be killed by Clove, and he pulls Clove off, kills her, lets Katniss get away, and he says, I have this quote. He says, just this one time, I let you go. For the little girl. You and me, we're even then. No more owed. You understand? So he's even obsessed with repaying his debts. And she understands that. And she even says, after that happened, she's like, I totally understand why he feels that way. I feel the same way. Like when you have to fight for every single thing that you get and you're not given anything, you understand that nothing comes for free. So she
Yeah, and you don't want to owe anyone anything.
Exactly. So she gets how big of a thing that was for him to let her live when he could have just killed her right there and he could have
Oh,
won.
absolutely.
But it's
Yeah.
like she understands that he wouldn't have been able to live with himself having that debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's just crazy because it's because of the way they were raised, like the way that they've had to fight for survival forever.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think those are both definitely prevalent themes throughout
Yeah.
the book. So, yeah, those are basically the main themes of the book. All the characters are so different in their own
Hmm.
way. One of my favorite relationships in the book, it's not in there a lot, obviously, but I love her and Senna's relationship. That was probably my favorite,
Hmm.
especially in the movie. Like, Lenny Kravitz
Lenny
plays
Kravitz.
Senna so well.
Iconic.
And he was like, if I could bet, like, I'd bet on you. Like, he's
Girl on
just,
Fire. Ugh.
I know, Katniss the Girl on Fire, and he's just, so typically, because the District 12 are minors, their introduction into the games is very
Yeah.
drab and not memorable and boring. And so when Cinna becomes the stylist for her introduction to the game, he makes her stand out
Hmm.
from the very get go,
Hmm.
makes her noticeable. Then Katniss does her own to make herself noticeable. So she had a nice little push of confidence from
Yeah.
Cinna, and then she becomes her own person in a way that's she knows what to do from there. And she's even just like being herself, like when Haymitch is like, you need to be different when you do the interview,
Hmm.
and she's like, and Cinna's like, just look at me
Yeah.
when I'm in the audience, pretend you're talking to just me. And she's able to be likable
Yeah.
and confident because when Caesar's asking her the question, she just immediately looks at Cinna and like she's just having a conversation with
Yeah.
him. So their relationship was hands down my favorite in the
Yeah.
book.
I did love that too. And I also think, like we were talking about how Katniss is, she's such an enigma because like you are
Mm-hmm.
rooting for her, like you said, because of her sense of loyalty to her family and like because the stakes are so high, and plus she's the underdog and you want the underdog to win just
Mm-hmm.
to say fuck the
Yeah.
capital. But she's so unlikable in so many ways because of the way that she was brought up and the way that she lets that affect her.
Yeah.
Like that's why they find it so hard. They're like, what angle do we go for? Like, you're not that funny, you're not that witty, you're not that, you're not
Mm-hmm.
this, you're not that. And she doesn't know
But
how to
how can
be.
she
Yeah.
be? Yeah, because she was immediately she grew up in a world that all they know is poverty, starvation. They don't
Hmm.
know they nothing they have is
Yeah.
gold. Everything is you live day by
Yeah.
day. And and she tragically her father
Hmm.
dies and then all of a sudden she has to become an
Yeah.
adult at a young age. She has to learn how to fend for herself and for her
Hmm.
family to make them survive. So she already has this hard outer
Yeah.
shell and she's never been able to fully experience who she could be as a person
Right.
and get that emotional sensitive side because she's never had the
Yeah.
ability to.
And then she says, because they're like, oh, picture someone that you feel comfortable with. And she's like, the only person that I feel comfortable with is Gail. And I can't exactly pretend I'm talking to Gail because then we'd be talking about how horrible the Capitol is and how fucked up
Mhm.
the Hunger Games
Yeah.
are.
So she can't even be her true self in a
Yeah.
way because her opinions are,
Yeah.
blasphemous.
And that's why
So
she
it's
never trusts Peta until the very end. She never believes that his motives are real because she just can't imagine someone being selfless because she can't afford
mhm.
to be selfless. It's not that
Yeah.
she's just this horrible, selfish person, it's that she's had to become that way because she
Yep.
didn't have a choice. Yeah, I also have, I mean, PETA. We talked a little bit about their alleged
Yeah.
love story. But I love his development because
Yeah.
we only know him, like you said, through Katniss's perception. So we only know
Mhm.
how Katniss perceives him. So obviously she hates him at first because of the whole debt thing, which we talked about. But she thinks that he's never had to suffer, et cetera, et cetera. And then the more that we learn about him just from him talking to Katniss and just from us seeing that his intentions are pure and that he really does like her and he's really liked her for all this time and he's not this rich kid that she thought he was, like we see his growth through her eyes,
Mhm.
which I think is really cool because then it's obvious that she's seeing that growth too because we're seeing it through her eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because especially like we I said before, he continuously proves her wrong. Like in the beginning of the games when he teams up with the career tributes,
Mm-hmm.
it's to protect her.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out, it's she thinks it's to have the upper hand to get rid of
Yeah.
her, but it's not. He literally joins the career tributes because he wants to protect her from
Yeah.
them killing
And she
her.
thinks, oh, he's proving me right by
Yeah,
betraying me when
but
really
it's not.
he wasn't at
Yeah,
all. And then he tries to
yeah,
keep her safe. He doesn't want her to go to the feast to get the medicine that
yeah.
would save his life. And, he's like, I'm not worth dying for. And if you die, I don't want to live without you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so tragic. And then you think about the fact that these are 16-year-olds who have to say things like that, like, I don't want to have to live without you and I don't want you to die for me. Like,
Yeah, I know.
what?
It's also it's crazy that they could have that kind of depth of that depth of feeling
Yeah, but
as
because
well at such a young
they've
age.
had that drilled into their minds, they've known about the Hunger Games since they could learn. Like, that's what they learn in
Mm-hmm.
school about
Yeah.
the uprising and the rebellion and all this stuff. Like, so they've had to grow up knowing about all of those things. So, like we just said, we didn't know about that stuff when we were teenagers. They knew about it since they were little kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's their
Yeah.
history.
All in all, the book was very well written.
Hmm.
It was a really, really good book. And to move on to the movie adaptation, I think the movie was so good.
Yeah,
It held so close to the
it was
novel.
very close. Very
Very,
close.
because especially because I literally read the book and then the next day I rewatched the
Hmm.
movie, and I was, because obviously I read the book and then I had read the books and then they made the movie adaptation. So there was a space of time between reading and watching the movie as when I was younger. But obviously during this back to back, I was like, oh, like holy crap, like they really stayed pretty
Yeah.
close
And
to
I
it.
was trying to watch it with like a critical eye because of
Yes, me
this.
too.
So there were
Mhm.
things that I did notice that stood out a lot to me.
Me too.
A couple, like there was a lot less people at the reaping, it felt like children, whereas in the book there was like thousands. So in the
Yeah.
movie, it kind of made it seem like she had a higher chance of getting picked.
Yeah.
And then another thing when they got on the train, I feel like in the movie they didn't show how starving they really were in District 12.
No, I definitely feel like the beginning part of the movie of that world was definitely short.
Yes, it didn't go into the depth that obviously the book was able to, but even like
Mhm.
they didn't like gorge themselves on food on the train because they had never
Yeah.
felt full before. Like they
Mhm.
barely showed them eating. Like they made comments about like, wow, there's so much food, but like
Mhm.
they, you know what I mean? But what I did really like was the camera angles during the games, like when something was happening, like when the tracker jackers, when she had gotten stung, or when the explosion happened, like the camera angles were like flickering everywhere and the sound would get muffled, so you kind of felt like
Mhm.
you were
Like you
as
were
lost
there.
as Katniss was, like with the shaky
Yeah.
cameras and stuff. I really liked that. I
Mhm.
thought it was a cool way to get inside of her head type thing.
Mhm. And it was funny. We both had said this. So, I completely blocked out the part about the dead tributes being made into like mutated dogs to go back to try to kill them.
Oh,
And so when I read it in the book, I was like, that is the most morbid
yeah.
thing I've ever read.
Yeah. And the fact that
And
she recognized them immediately,
yeah,
like,
I was like, that is such a dirty move by the game
yeah.
makers to do that. And so I kind of liked in the book or in the movie, they were like, oh, they're just
Yeah.
dogs.
Yeah. Like, I
Because I'm
did like
like,
that, but
I
also,
don't think I could emotionally handle seeing like Rue's eyes on a dog trying to kill
yeah.
Katniss. You know
And
what I
even in the
mean?
movie, like, she put Kato out of his misery very quickly. Like, they
Yeah,
weren't there for
quickly. It
24
wasn't the same
hours.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously the scene with Rue when she died and
Oh,
she's singing to, I mean, I'm already, I cry in general, but being pregnant, my hormones are 10
yeah.
times worse, so I cry instantly. And I was just bawling my eyes out. And I liked that for them. This was the one thing I liked because in the book, when she does the tribute to Rue, District 11 sends her like a
Yeah.
fresh loaf of bread, and she realizes what that must have cost
Yeah.
for them to send her that. And so I like in the movie their interpretation of what she did for Rue was the rebellion in District
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
The town basically going against the peacekeepers and destroying
Hmm.
everything because
Burning
again
their
they're watching this
village to the
12-year
ground.
old
Yeah.
watching this 12-year old die, but then seeing someone care for
Yeah.
her at the same
Yeah.
time. So it's
And they
you know
saw that the capital couldn't, the same thing that we said, like that she still kept that part of her. And they saw that she was given that little fuck you to the capital, and they wanted to do the same
mhm.
thing. And I think that's
Yeah.
good for the movie because it sets you up for the rest of the series. So I think that was a
Mhm.
good change that was made. I do think that Katniss in the movie was a little too meek compared to Katniss in the book.
Oh yeah.
Like,
No, I agree with
and
that
like
too.
I think that for the series as a whole, Jennifer Lawrence does an incredible job, but like the voice that she talked to Peta in was kind of like quiet and like girly, and I'm like, that's not the Katniss. No, like she didn't warm up to him right away. She was very abrasive with him. She wouldn't have been so meek or girlish around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I actually feel like the chemistry in the book was not portrayed in the movie. I think that in the later movies, yeah, Jennifer and Josh had a lot of
Hmm.
chemistry, but in this movie in particular, I didn't get the vibe that I got when I was reading the book.
I completely agree, and I think that that was purposeful. Like I think that was because you couldn't in the book you could read the struggle that was going on in Katniss's head because even though she had chemistry with Peeta, she was confused about her feelings about Gale and stuff. But in the
Mm-hmm.
movie, I mean, they show Gale watching it and looking sad, but you don't get her inner monologue of her struggling with it. So I almost feel like the fact
Mm-hmm.
that they didn't have chemistry kind of portrayed that. You know what I mean?
Kind of.
But like you said, in the series, it obviously changes. But in the
Yes, no,
books
it really
too.
does. And obviously, like, I like at the very end when she tries to, like, find him, after they're whipped up into the plane or whatever. But I don't, I think watching it, the movie, years ago, I didn't really notice it. But seeing it now, I was like, oh, I kind of didn't, I wanted more from them,
Yeah. Yeah, I
and I didn't
and I
get it.
wanted more from her. Like I
Yeah.
remember her performance in the later movies as being a lot more abrasive and stuff and like that's the
Hmm.
Katniss that was in this book.
I definitely think she grew as an actress throughout this series.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Because she when she got hired for the role, she was a newbie. She wasn't really doing this
That's
was
true.
she had only done a couple like indie films. The Hunger Games was her basically her shot into
Yeah.
fame. And so as she grew as an actress, her role as Katniss grew and became stronger.
That's true. That's true because it was able to grow with her. Can I just say that they knew that this movie was going to do well because of this all-star cast? Are you effing kidding me? Like all of the
I
people who are in
know.
this, like we said, Lenny
I
Kravitz,
know.
Elizabeth
Stanley
Banks, Stanley
Tucci,
Tucci,
Woody
like
Harrelson,
just
Donald Sutherland as President Snow, which it was interesting because so like President Snow is not in the book at all.
no, no.
He's not. But obviously, although I loved the ending scene when Seneca Crane has to go into the room and eat the nightlock berries
Yes.
because he was pushing so hard for a redemption arc for
Uh-huh.
Katniss and like an underdog thing, and President Snow was like, no, like I don't, this defies the whole
Yeah.
point of what the game is supposed to represent. And so since he was
Yeah.
wrong basically,
And
and
he
that
made them
Katniss
look
was able to
stupid. Yeah.
rebel, yeah, he had to go in and eat the nightlock berries. I was like, that was a
Yeah.
savage. That was one of my favorite parts of
Well,
the
it's
movie.
also him just showing I'm always gonna fucking win.
Mm-hmm.
You might be the game
Yeah,
maker, but I'm gonna find a new game maker.
yeah. But Donald Sutherland at President Snow, he's so good
Yeah,
at playing
he's so
an
good at it.
asshole.
So, okay, so I am obsessed with looking up the budgets for movies. And listen to these numbers. The budget for the film was $78 million, dollars, which is a shit ton of money. And if you account for inflation, yes, I looked it up, that's 102 million.
Dang.
It grossed over $694 million dollars in with inflation, that's 909 million. So
Okay.
like
I thought it would have been
609, yeah,
higher,
but
actually.
694 million return on a 78 million dollar budget
No, I
is
agree.
fucking
I
insane. And
agree.
that's for the first
Mm-hmm.
movie. So like it
Mm-hmm.
only grows after that once people see the
Yeah, it's
first
true.
movie. You know what I mean? Like, because this is a series where the sequels are successful. Like it's not like the
Mm-hmm.
first one is only, like Scream or something. Like this is
Yeah.
books that got better as she was more successful. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was fucking wild. But I loved the
And then
movie.
like
I mean, obviously I loved the book more.
I think one of my favorite parts though is that's mahogany. Such an iconic line.
I
It's just
know.
like it's just it's it was good. It's crazy though because they do have this all star cast, And realistically, they're not in it a lot.
Yeah.
The whole movie is about Jennifer Lawrence. She's the star of the
Yeah.
movie, you know, but they still got these big names to be like almost supporting
No, that's
roles.
one that's so true. Especially like
Yeah.
Effie and Haymitch, like, yeah, they're in it a lot in the beginning, but not during the games at all.
Mm-mm.
And
No.
Lenny Kravitz is in it for what, a full minute, if that? Like, it's crazy.
Oh my god. But he did
Yeah,
great. Him and Jennifer's chemistry was like
insane.
perfect.
Yeah.
It was good. I guess because there was so much that happened in the games portion of the novel that it's hard to incorporate all of it
Yeah.
into the movie, but I kind of wish that they completely like cut out her search for water and wanting
Yeah.
water from Haymitch, and then her realizing, oh, if he's not giving that to me, then it must be because he knows I'm near
Yeah,
water.
yeah. There was so much about their relationship that was cut out, but also because like so much of that relationship was in her head. But like, I mean, she could have vocalized that in the games, like, oh, he must
No,
know that I'm close,
yeah,
whatever. But there was so much like even her knowing, like, okay, a kiss is some broth. What like the
yes,
fact that she understood Haymitch so much when they could barely be in the same room together because they didn't get along,
I
you know?
know. Well, that's the thing. I feel like her and Hamish were kind of cut from the same
Yeah.
coin, so it was or cut from the same cloth. So it's he definitely supported her, and then doesn't know how to show
Right.
that because he's an alcoholic dude, and
And he
he like doesn't expect his tributes to win
exactly,
or to do
exactly, and he
anything.
says like
So
maybe I finally have a chance to have a victor. And then there's
yeah,
a point in the book where Katniss says like how hard it must be for him to see the tributes every year because he's the only one. He doesn't have any help. He's the only survivor from District 12.
mm-hmm,
So he's the one who has to look at these two people in the face, pretend that he's going to help them, and then watch them die. And then he finally
yeah,
feels like he has a chance to have a victor. And, that comes up where, PETA says, yeah, my mom said that we might finally have a victor. She was talking about you. Like everyone had so much hope in Katniss. And it turns
yeah.
out that it was well deserved because good job, Katniss. I mean, you really
I know.
made a fuckery for yourself with those berries. And
I know, and it was just I know, and it was funny like too, and the one gift comes down from the sky, and Haymitch is like, "You call that a
yeah,
kiss?"
yes.
And it's like you could just read it in Woody Harrelson's
Yeah,
voice because I
yeah.
did,
Oh, yeah, with
I
his
did.
like gross stringy hair. Oh my God. But
Yeah,
then even like even the whole thing with the berries, the fact that she's like, oh, you're like, oh my God, she's so brilliant. And then you realize that it's like the start of the real fight for her life. And
yeah,
Haymitch understands that and is able to convey that to her and convey
exactly.
the gravity of what she did when she's not able to understand it. And
Hmm.
that's another part of them just like really being able to understand each other, which is really cool.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think the movie was pretty well
Hmm.
done because, like as usual, a movie made from a book is never going to be exactly like the
Right.
book. It's literally
And this was
impossible
before they were
because with the
doing TV series also.
yeah. So, but I think it was, and they only got better. Like
Yeah.
Catching Fire was my favorite book and my favorite
Oh my
movie.
God. I'm so obsessed with the fact that we did this that we're obviously going to have to do Catching Fire. Do we like even have to go through our ratings for this book? Because,
Well, before
okay.
we do have some questions from our listeners. Then you had some questions that
Okay.
you wanted to ask as well. So, one of the questions we got was if you could recast any main character, who would it be and why? And if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I thought the casting was great.
I agree with you.
I actually had no changes, 10 out of 10.
I came up with one just to honor our listener who asked
I
this
agree.
question. So I said Clove just from the description in the book of her being this like huge force who trained her whole life to compete and her
Yes.
stature in the movie. Like obviously we saw her with a knife and we saw her just like hitting bullseyes with her eyes closed and stuff, but her stature was just so unimpressive that I thought it was a weird casting for her being one of
See,
the careers.
Yeah, I didn't even think about those characters.
Because I couldn't think of a
Actually,
main character that I
I
would
know
change.
because I know because I just think that they really did a really good
Yeah,
job with the
yeah.
casting
And
in
like
this movie.
I was thinking
Whoever,
like maybe Prim because she didn't have any personality, but then like you see in the later movies that she's the perfect person for
hmm
her role. So
yeah.
I I had to say someone. So that's what we got. All right, what's our next
And then,
question?
so this question, I read it and I was like, oh, I have nothing to contribute because. So it says, what would be your skill to help you win the games, and how would you use that to help or hurt Katniss? Girl, I don't know how to survive. No, I'm that one that if a horror movie is my life, I'm the first one dead. I'm dead instantaneously. I am a klutz. I would have been that person that accidentally stepped off the thing and blown
Blow
myself to
yourself
pieces
to pieces.
because I either couldn't balance or I jumped too soon. Like I'm smart. I'm sure I could like think of things, but I'm like, no, if I were in the games, I'd be the first one dead.
Yeah. I I also could not like I have no survival skills
Yeah.
and I hate being chased. So I would literally just
Yeah.
turn around and be like, kill me, kill me. I can't be chased.
I know.
But
I
the
know.
only thing I could think of is like I'm really good in a crisis. Like I don't panic and I'm able
Yes.
to think
Yeah.
clearly, but that doesn't help
Mhm.
me. Like that would help me if I got
No.
hurt. That's not going to
Yeah.
help me hunt people. Like it would I help or hurt Katniss? I would try to be her ally so she could help me. I mean,
I'm like it's I have like I'm so book smart, but I have like no common sense
but
sometimes.
you
So
have okay, give yourself some grace here, Heather. This is not a normal situation that you should have to be thinking about, okay? This is an
I
unfair
know,
question.
but like for instance, there was one time my carbon monoxide detector was going off in our house when I lived at home, and it said like something like go to fresh air, and I thought the carbon monoxide detector needed fresh air, so I put it by the window, not realizing that I needed fresh air. So I would fucking
Yeah.
die.
Yeah, you're done. I'm sorry about that. You're
I'm
done.
done. It was, and I was in my 20s when this happened. This was not like me as a child. I was in my 20s. My mom was like, "Why is the carbon monoxide detector by the window?" And I was like, "Oh, it said it needed fresh air." And my mom was like,
Like it
"What?
doesn't.
No,
It doesn't.
you needed fresh air.
Yeah.
You could have died." And I was like,
Okay,
"Oh,
so now we know if you ever get put into the Hunger Games, they just have to carbon monoxide you. Like put you in a garage with a car
that's
on.
probably the
Okay.
best way to go."
All right. I mean that's the most painless way to go, I think. So
I
that's better than
know.
getting an arrow through the heart. So,
Yep.
okay.
So,
So neither of us are surviving the Hunger Games. Neither of us are helping or
no,
hurting Katniss. Nice. Thank you for the
no.
question.
If anything, I'm helping her win because I'm dying so
Exactly.
quickly.
I'm
So I guess I
yeah,
am
I'm
helping
like,
her.
do you want me to put that arrow in my own chest for you? Thank you. Thank you for killing me. This is stressful. I don't
Exactly.
want to do it anymore. I don't handle stress well. Anyway, okay.
No,
So one of my questions, and we already know the answer, but I just need you to
that's
think
fine.
about this book only. This book only. Just The Hunger Games 1. Are you
Okay.
Team PETA or Team Gale, and why?
Team PETA. And for me, it was his selfless act of giving her the bread. That got
Mm,
me, like, immediately in
mhm.
the book because he could see this girl that was on the brink of death. And even though
His mom like
his
beat
mom
him
was like
after.
a
Yeah.
bitch, yeah, like he still like threw some bread to her to at least help her live another day.
Okay.
And I just feel like Gail is just so like abrasive and kind of like hard-headed in a way
Oh
that
yeah.
like I don't like, and almost like possessive of Katniss, which is kind of toxic.
In this book, though, Heather,
So
in this book, we're only talking about book number 1.
yeah, I know, but I kind of still got the vibe
I
from
mean,
that.
okay. Let me tell you why I disagree, and it's because I'm thinking of PETA. Okay, I'm saying specifically for this book, I'm Team Gale because PETA deserves better than Katniss. That's why I'm Team Gale, okay? Katniss is still too selfish. She isn't looking at the bigger
Hmm.
picture yet. She barely thought she could have a future. So how can she envision how great a future with Peeta would look like? And first, I mean, last and most important, Peeta does not deserve to be a second option. Period.
No, and I guess like I'm just so biased now because I have read all the
You're
books
Team
and
Peeta for
everything.
yourself, okay? We're talking about for
Also that.
Katniss, okay?
No, okay. No, I can't. I love my little bakery boy so much and his kind little
Oh
heart.
yeah,
I
this
love a sensitive
this
soul.
100% changes over the series. I just think for this book specifically, I'm like,
Yeah.
Katniss, you're a
I can get it.
bitch,
No,
okay?
because you know what? Because I will tell you when I do recall when I first read the book, I was really torn between the two
Yes,
of them.
when I first read the book, I was
I
too.
will Yeah, I was like I didn't know who I wanted her to
Yeah,
be with, and I knew it was going to be a love triangle throughout the
right.
books. But then like obviously as you read the other books, you're like, no, Gail is kind of like the
Yeah,
worst
yeah,
person.
I agree. And also like it's just really, really sad at the end how Peeta comes to the realization that Katniss wasn't being truthful in the arena. Even though she
Yeah.
was to an
Hmm.
extent, she wasn't prepared to follow through with that. And it's just like really heartbreaking when he realizes that, and heartbreaking when he realizes that he's not in on this agreement that Haymitch and
Yeah.
Katniss have. So I just think to spare Peeta's own feelings, we need to be Team Gale for now. Okay, it'll change next time. Okay, I might already know the answer to this question too, but who is your favorite character?
When I was a teenager, it was definitely
Hmm.
Katniss.
Understandable.
As an adult, it's Cinna.
Mine too. Please
Yeah.
tell me why. Well, you already talked about Senna, and that's why I didn't say
Yeah.
much because I was waiting for this
Yeah.
question.
No, because I just think he was that anchor that Katniss really needed, and I think that if Cinna wasn't a character in this book, it would had she would have had a different outcome,
Yeah,
and her story would have been
I
different.
totally agree. I totally agree.
But because he was such a big inspiration for her and he believed
He
in
was her
her,
rock.
like she's gone through her whole life not feeling, cared
Yeah,
for or loved or anything. Well, I mean, I'm sure she felt loved by her family, but like she's never been
yeah,
supported.
yeah,
And Cinna was like her number one
yeah,
supporter. Like he literally, like I said before, he literally said, "If I could bet, I would
yeah.
bet on
And
you."
he had
And
no
so she's
stake in her game either.
no,
Like,
no, and he just genuinely cared about her, and she's never really had
hmm
that. And I think that their relationship, and I know like in Catching Fire, I think something bad happens to him if I remember correctly, and it's like I
I
just
think
like
it's in Mocking. Maybe it is
I
Catching Fire.
can't remember
Yeah,
which one it's in. Yeah, and I just know that like as an adult, he's definitely my
yeah.
favorite character.
I
And I know he's like a supporting role, but it's such
But
a
he's
good
yeah,
supporting
and
role.
he grows to be more than that, but also like just
Yes.
his symbolism is more than just a supporting role. Um, I like how when they first met, he calls out the irony of him being from the capital, and he says to Katniss, I highlighted it, how despicable we must seem to you, because he
Mhm.
knows what she thinks of
Yeah.
him. And then it turns out that he's the only one there right at the end, right before the games begin. He gives her the confidence, he gives her the calm, and not to mention, at the end, he's on her side and he understands the shitstorm that's about to come. He
Yes.
understands the
Mhm.
life that she just signed herself up for, and he's on her side when he's from the
Yeah.
capital. So even though he barely has any FaceTime in the movie and in the book, he's always this presence that calms
Mhm.
her. And basically, like the
Yeah.
only thing away from home when she still feels like she can't trust Peeta and Haymitch and Effie, like he's the one thing away from home that she feels like she can trust. Which is crazy
Mhm.
because she knows nothing about him, but he just makes her feel that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. As an adult, I'm like, can I have a Cinna? Like, can everyone have a
I know.
Cinna, please?
I know. Like he's just so precious and And the fact too that he's able to allow her to have the Mockingjay pin, so she's able to have a piece of
Yeah.
home with her in the games. Like, it's just everything he did throughout his part in this book and in the movie, he did it with intention and
Exactly. Exactly.
determination.
Yeah. And he did it for
You
her,
know,
not for himself.
yeah, he wanted them to stand out. He wanted her to be able to prove to herself that she can be a
Hmm.
contender and that she can be who she
Hmm.
is, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
And that's enough.
You don't have to contort or change yourself to for appearances to try to get yourself more
Yeah.
leverage in the game. Just be who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. Wow. I love Senna. Okay.
I know. All right, so now we'll
Okay.
rate the book. So my rating system is out of 5 arrows through an apple.
Oh my God, I thought you were gonna say like through a heart or something. I was like, Jesus, Heather, this is
Oh
dark.
no. Through an
Okay, I'm sorry.
apple.
I'm sorry.
It was a very
It was
iconic
iconic. It
scene
was
in the book and in
right
the
out of that
movie.
pig's mouth.
And it was the first thing I thought of, and I try to be cute and clever,
It was
and you
adorable. I'm
made it
sorry. What about when
wanted.
she was like the man fell in the punch bowl and Haymitch loses his shit?
I
I
know.
love it so much. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
um,
Apples. I'm so sorry.
no, it's okay. So I gave it 4.5 apples.
Really? Please
Yeah, which is
explain.
funny because when I rated it originally, it was 5. It was 5 out of 5 arrows through an apple. And rereading it, I don't know, it's probably because it's YA
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
older now. I think it was just I know that when I reread Catching Fire, it's going to be 5 stars cuz that was my
Yeah.
favorite book. But this was just it was missing something for
Okay.
me. And I don't know what it
Okay.
was. For some reason I was like it wasn't as it was good. I loved it, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't as enjoyable reading it now as it was when I was a
Okay.
teenager.
Okay. Fair enough.
If that makes any
No,
sense
I get it.
whatsoever.
I get it because, like you said, Catching Fire, like this, to me, this series gets better as it goes along.
It does. It really, really
So now
does.
I'm regretting that I gave this 5 arrows through the apple because I'm gonna
No,
have to also give
don't.
all the rest of them 5. I'm gonna have to go higher than 5. Are we allowed
No,
to do
no,
that?
no. It's fine. No, because your rating
Yes,
is
but how
valid,
am I
and we've
going to rate
discussed
the
this
other
so
ones
many
higher?
times.
I'm not going to be able to. We'll make it work. It's fine.
We'll change the rating system when it
Okay.
comes.
So I'm sticking to my 5 arrows through an apple.
Yes.
I I love everything about the story, especially the
Yeah.
nostalgia part, but I love that it's high
Yes.
stakes. There's so much character development. There's obviously
Mm-hmm.
more to come, but in such a short, because
Mm-hmm.
when you think about it, like we said, this entire book is centered on just the time in the games, basically, and like the couple days beforehand. So, like
Mm-hmm.
that much character development in such a short amount of time. And since I was reading this for like the thousandth time, I tried to look at it more critically. Like, do I love this book or do I just love the series? But I think it's really descriptive and it helps you feel the desperation of Katniss, of the competitors, of everyone living in the districts, and visualize the events that unfold in the arena, even in like the small ways that it's different than the movie. So that's why I know I'm not just like, oh, visualizing the movie, like the small ways
Mm-hmm.
that it was different, like the mutts that we talked about, like I was able to
Yeah.
visualize that. And so I think like rating it as a YA novel, I thought it was great. And I love that we
No,
did
I mean,
this.
yeah, me too. It was actually really great to reread it because it's
Hmm.
been years since I read it, been years since I watched the movie. So it was kind of nice, like you said, it was
Yeah.
nostalgic. It was nice to like go back and like I'm excited to read more books from my
Yeah.
past that I haven't read in years, just to kind of relive it now. Like I said, as I'm in
Yeah.
my 30s now, and we've grown as people, and so you read these books from a new perspective, and that's
I
kind of
just
really
love
nice.
that a tale of 24 teenagers all fighting to the death brings us nostalgia back to when life was
I know,
easier and we didn't have
and it's
bills to
just like
pay and
it's just so funny because I like read the book and I'm like, the premise of this book is so dark, and I just did not
Yeah.
recognize that
Yeah. That's what I'm
as a teenager.
saying.
I just
Like,
didn't. Just it
it
went
was
over my
so
head.
far-fetched. And now I'm like, this is
Yes.
real. Like, this is a
Uh-huh.
possibility.
I know. I know.
Oh, thank God that we're not
But
18. Whew.
all in all, like I said, it was great.
Yeah,
I'm glad we
me
read it.
too.
There'll be more episodes to come of older books, past books that we've read
And
from our childhood, teenage
and
years.
listeners, let us know how you feel about dystopian genre also,
Yeah.
because
There's a lot of good
yeah,
dystopian books
so
I've
we
read.
that's definitely something we can
And
dive into more too. So,
yeah, and like I said, we've said before, keep an eye out. We have we're going to be reading some pretty popular books as well as new books and old books. So we would love to hear questions from you guys about the books and our thoughts or thoughts you guys have. So you'll see we'll post as we get closer to certain episodes that we're recording and the books we're going to be doing, and we want your thoughts and
yeah.
questions. So like, subscribe, download our episodes, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at fullybookedcafpod. Our email is fullybookedcafpod@gmail.com. And thanks for checking us out. And remember,
If you need us, we're fully booked. Bye.
goodbye.